Thanks for logging into myfoxhurricane.com. I'm meteorologist Dave Osterberg, and wow, this escalated quickly, didn't it? 4 names in what? Less than 48 hours, and we got 8 names down, actually 9 total if you count that tropical system in January. But we got a long way to go, folks. We're just kind of getting into the meat of our hurricane season. And, you know, 27% of all storms that are named happen in August. You get into September, and that's the jackpot. 34% of really most of the tropical activity happens in September. So we got a long way to go. There's a lot going on, but let's break it down for you. These 2 disturbances in the middle of the Atlantic, no concern whatsoever. Yes, they may develop, especially this red one, but it's not going to amount to anything. It's going to move toward the north. As far as Franklin goes, Franklin is forecast to become a hurricane again and drift northward just to the west of Bermuda and then eventually tail to the northeast. So we're not concerned about that. The one that needs to be watched in the western Caribbean and the eastern Gulf of Mexico hasn't even developed yet. The moisture is kind of sitting over Central America, and it's something that over the next 2 or 3 days will likely begin to slowly develop as it heads into the Caribbean and eventually into the Gulf. Franklin, yeah, it could become a hurricane, maybe a Category 2 hurricane. But you look at the forecast cone, you kind of keep in Bermuda on the west, keeping it west of Bermuda as it rolls north and then starts to take that turn once it gets past North Carolina. But we've seen many storms do this, pass safely between, or harmlessly, better word, between Bermuda and the East Coast. So we'll keep an eye on that. Then, of course, you've got all this moisture, which is beginning to pool over here in Central America. Meanwhile, you've got wind shear going on in the Gulf of Mexico. So this is going to be an interesting battle because as all this moisture moves into the Gulf, the computer models are saying that, you know what, we're going to have some of this wind shear here, which would keep the system obviously a little bit weaker than if the wind shear wasn't there. So there's just a lot of little things that are going to play out over the next 2 or 3 days before we fine-tune this forecast. The one thing we are certain of is all this deep, deep tropical moisture is eventually going to get pulled northward. Whether or not it's a named storm, we just don't know. However, a lot of the computer models are saying it will be. Even if it's not, it is going to bring much needed rain for Central and South Florida sometime early next week. So this is what bears watching because we just don't know in the short term how this interaction with the Yucatan is going to play out, plus some of this wind shear. So no doubt watching the Western Gulf, the Southern Gulf and the Western Caribbean for activity as this rolls up toward the northeast. And sometime early next week, we'll be dealing with all this deep tropical moisture in Central and South Florida. So keep checking back in with us. You know we will keep you updated. Have a great day.